The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with voices from 100 different worlds. Alien beings sat in floating chairs or stood on crystal platforms, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some looked like giant insects with shimmering wings. Others were made of living stone that glowed with inner light. A few were just clouds of gas that spoke through special machines. In the center of it all, Ambassador Minho walked to the speaking platform. He was human, which meant he looked small and plain next to the other beings. His dark hair was neat, and he wore a simple blue uniform that marked him as a representative of Earth and the human colonies. The noise in the hall grew quiet as Minho reached the podium. This was unusual. Humans rarely spoke at council meetings. Most of the time, the bigger and older alien races made all the important decisions. Humans were seen as newcomers barely worth listening to. Minho cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice was calm and steady, but the words he said would change everything. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he said, "I stand before you today to announce that humanity is leaving." A few aliens made sounds of confusion. Others whispered to each other in their strange languages. Most just looked bored. Leaving? Where would the humans go? Hyejin, a scientist from the planet Altair, leaned forward in her floating chair. Unlike many of her people, she had worked with humans before. She had seen how clever they were, how quickly they learned. Something about Minho's calm voice worried her. "We have tried for 50 years to be good members of this council," Minho continued. "We have shared our knowledge. We have helped in your wars. We have built your ships and healed your sick. But we are always treated as children who should be grateful just to sit at your table." Chancellor Vexthul, the leader of the Altarian Empire, made a sound like laughter. His 6 arms waved in the air as he spoke in his booming voice. Finally, the little humans realize they do not belong here. This is good news for everyone. Other aliens began to nod and make sounds of agreement. The crystalline beings called resonance hummed together in a way that meant they were happy. The warrior race known as the Korthak pounded their metal fists on their chairs, showing they approved. Minho waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke again, and this time his voice was even quieter than before. "We leave tomorrow," he said. "All human colonies, all human ships, all human stations. We will take our people and go to a place where we can grow without being told we are too young, too weak, too stupid to matter." Now the hall went completely silent. Tomorrow? That seemed impossible. Humans had colonies on dozens of worlds. They had huge space stations that took decades to build. They ran factories and hospitals and schools across half the galaxy. How? Could they just leave in one day? "You cannot be serious," said Counselor Kyrus, another Altarian. "Your people are spread across the galaxy. You have agreements, contracts, responsibilities." Minho smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We have fulfilled all our contracts. We have kept all our promises. But we made those agreements with beings who saw us as equals. Since you do not, we are free to leave." On the other side of the galaxy, Engineer Jaewon stood in the control room of the largest spaceship yard ever built. The massive structure floated in orbit around a distant planet, its metal arms reaching out for millions of miles. For 20 years, this shipyard had built the fastest and strongest ships in the galaxy. Almost every major race had ships that were made here. Jaewon looked at his watch and then pressed a button on his control panel. All around the shipyard, human workers stopped what they were doing. Giant robot arms that had been building anew Warship for the Korthak simply turned off. Assembly lines that made engines for merchant ships went quiet. "Begin breakdown protocol," Jawan said into his communicator. "All sections, all levels. We have 72 hours. The humans at the shipyard had practiced this moment many times, though they had hoped they would never need to use their plan. Now they moved with the speed and skill of people who knew exactly what to do. Giant ships arrived and began to dock with the shipyard. But instead of bringing new materials, they came to take things away. Piece by piece, section by section, the humans began to take apart everything they had built. At the same time, on a research station deep in space, Dr. Somin sat at her computer. For 15 years, she had worked to find cures for diseases that killed millions of aliens across the galaxy. Her lab had created medicines that could heal almost any injury and treatments that could add decades to an alien's life. Now she was uploading all her research to the Galactic Information Network. Every formula, every test result, every piece of knowledge she had gained, she was giving it all away for free. "Someone else will have to continue the work," she said to her assistant, a young human named Dong Yun. "We have taught them everything we can. If they want to learn more, they will have to do it themselves." Dong Yun looked sad as he helped pack up the lab equipment. "Do you think they will be able to understand it without us?" Soman paused in her work. "I do not know," she said quietly. "I hope so, but I am not sure they ever really tried to understand what we were doing. They were happy to use our medicines, but they never asked how we made them work so well." Back in the council hall, the aliens were starting to realize that Minho was not making a threat or trying to get better treatment. He was simply stating a fact. Humanity was leaving, and nothing anyone said would change their minds. "Where will you go?" asked Hyejin. She was the only one who sounded worried instead of angry or confused. Minho looked at her with something that might have been kindness. "Somewhere we can grow," he said. "Somewhere we can build and learn and become what we are meant to be." "You are making a mistake," said Chancellor Vexthul. "Without the protection of the Council, you will not survive. The galaxy is a dangerous place for small, weak races." For the first time, Minho's calm expression changed. He almost smiled. "We know how dangerous the galaxy is," he said. "We have been protecting ourselves for a long time. Longer than you know." With that, he turned and walked away from the podium. As he left the hall, he did not look back at the aliens who had never seen humans as anything more than useful servants. The Great Exodus had begun. 3 months had passed since the humans left, and Counselor Kyrus was having the worst day of his long life. He sat in his office high above the capital city of Altair Prime, staring at reports that made no sense. The first problem had been small. A few trading ships got lost between star systems because their navigation computers stopped working properly. Then some automated factories shut down for no clear reason. Now, massive cargo ships were crashing into space stations because the traffic control systems had failed. Kyrus picked up another report from his desk. The Galactic Trade Network, which handled business between thousands of worlds, was falling apart. Every day, more systems failed. Money transfers got lost. Cargo shipments disappeared into space. Orders for food and medicine never reached their destinations. "How is this possible?" Kyrus muttered to himself. "These systems worked perfectly for decades." His assistant, a nervous creature with too many eyes, shuffled into the room. "Sir, we have another emergency call from the Outer Rim colonies. Their communication array has stopped working completely." Kyrus felt his heart sink. The Outer Rim colonies were home to billions of beings. Without communication, they could not call for help if they were attacked or if their life support systems failed. On the other side of the galaxy, Hyejin was having similar problems. As the chief scientist on the Council's research committee, she was supposed to understand how things worked. But every day brought new mysteries she could not solve. She stood in front of a massive computer that controlled the flow of information across half the galaxy. The machine was the size of a building and cost more than most planets made in a year. It had always worked perfectly. Now it was dying, and no one knew why. "Show me the error logs again," she said to her team of technicians. Lines of code flowed across the screens around her. Most of it made sense to her trained eye, but there were parts that seemed to be written in a different style. The code was elegant and simple, but also incredibly complex in ways that hurt her brain to think about. "These sections here," she said, pointing to the strange code. "Where did they come from?" Her chief technician, a being made of living metal, spoke in a voice like grinding gears. "We always assumed they were standard protocols, Dr. Hyejin. They were in all the systems when we first started using them." Hyejin felt a cold fear growing in her chest. "Standard according to who?" The technician paused for a long moment. I do not know. They were just there. They worked, so we never questioned them." Hyejin began to understand something terrible. The humans had not just worked alongside other races for 50 years. They had helped design the very systems that kept galactic civilization running. And now that they were gone, no one else really understood how those systems worked. Chief Engineer Borum was discovering the same thing in her own way. She was responsible for maintaining the great communication array that connected all the major worlds in the galaxy. The array was built into an asteroid the size of a small moon, and it could send messages across thousands of light years in seconds. For years, Borum had worked alongside human engineers on the array. She had always thought she understood the technology as well as they did. Now, with the humans gone, she was learning how wrong she had been. Standing in the main control room, she watched dozens of screens show system failures across the array. The problem started small, a few relay stations going offline, some messages taking longer to send, but now entire sectors were going dark. "Why are these backup systems not working?" she asked her team. Her second-in-command, an engineer named Youngmin, who had trained under human supervisors, looked pale and worried. "The backup systems are working fine," he said, "but they are not connecting to the main network properly. It is like they are speaking a different language." Borum studied the technical manuals they had for the array. The documents showed how to operate the equipment and how to replace broken parts. But they did not explain the deeper principles of how the technology actually worked. That knowledge had always come from human engineers who were happy to share their expertise. "Did we ever write down what the humans taught us?" Borum asked. Youngman shook his head sadly. "We never thought we needed to. They were always here to help when we had problems." Meanwhile, on the frontier worlds at the edge of galactic space, Tae-hyun was dealing with a crisis of a different kind. As a security coordinator for the Outer Rim Defense Force, he was responsible for protecting merchant ships and civilian transports from pirates and raiders. For as long as anyone could remember, the space lanes between worlds had been safe. Pirates existed, but they were rare and usually easy to catch. The early warning systems always detected threats long before they could attack innocent ships. Now those same space lanes had become killing fields. Tae-hyun stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In just 3 months, pirate attacks had increased by 300%. Worse, The pirates seemed to know exactly where to strike. They attacked ships carrying valuable cargo and avoided military patrols with impossible accuracy. How are they doing this? Tae-hyun asked his intelligence officer, a sharp-eyed woman named Sun-hee. Sun-hee pulled up a map of recent attacks. The pattern made no sense according to everything they knew about pirate behavior. It is like they have access to our shipping schedules and patrol routes, she said. But that should be impossible. Tae-hyun studied the map more carefully. Something about the pattern nagged at him like a half-remembered dream. Then he realized what was bothering him. Sun-hee, pull up the attack patterns from 5 years ago. When the old data appeared on screen, the difference was shocking. 5 years ago, pirate attacks had been random and poorly planned. Pirates would strike at empty ships or attack targets that were too well defended. They seemed to have no idea where the good targets were. It is like someone was warning us about attacks before they happened, Tae-hyun said slowly. Someone who could predict where pirates would strike and help us stop them. Sun-hee nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. The humans always seemed to know things before the rest of us did. They would suggest patrol routes or recommend extra security for certain shipments. We thought they were just being careful. What if they were not just being careful? Tae-hyun asked. What if they knew about threats because they were actively watching for them? Back in the capital, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. The great hall that had once buzzed with confident voices now echoed with worried whispers and angry shouts. Chancellor Vexathul stood at the center of the hall, his 6 arms gesturing wildly as he tried to make sense of the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. These problems cannot all be connected to the humans leaving, he declared. They were a minor species. They could not have been so important to our civilization. But even as he spoke, more bad news arrived. Food production on agricultural worlds was dropping as farming equipment failed. Medical centers were closing because diagnostic machines stopped working properly. Transport ships were getting lost in space because navigation systems no longer functioned correctly. Hyejin stood up in her section of the hall. Her voice was quiet, but in the worried silence, everyone could hear her clearly. I think we made a mistake, she said. A very big mistake. The hall fell completely silent. Even the resonance stopped their humming. The humans did not just help us, Hyejin continued. They were the foundation that our whole civilization was built on, and we never even noticed. Chancellor Vexthul's face turned the dark purple color. That meant he was angry. That is impossible. We are the elder races. We built this civilization long before humans even learned to make fire. Hyejin pulled out a datapad and began reading from it. In the past 3 months, we have lost 43% of our interstellar communication capacity. Trade volume has dropped by 60%. Pirate attacks have tripled. Medical research has stopped completely at 17 major facilities. She looked up at the assembled aliens, her expression grim. These are not coincidences, she said. These are the symptoms of a civilization that just lost its immune system. For the first time since the humans had left, the Galactic Council began to understand what they had really lost. And in that understanding came a terrible question that no one wanted to ask. What else had the humans been doing that no one else knew about? Dr. Nari had not slept in 3 days. As the most brilliant analyst in the Resonant Collective, she had been tasked with finding out exactly what the humans had been doing for the past 50 years. What she discovered made her crystal form dim, with shock. She stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her usually bright surface now dull and gray. Around her, the greatest minds from 100 worlds waited to hear her report. The hall was quieter than it had ever been. "Honored council members," Nari began, her voice creating harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "I must tell you something that will be hard to believe. The humans were not just members of our civilization. They were its architects." Murmur of disbelief ran through the hall. Chancellor Vexthul raised one of his 6 arms to object, but Nari continued before he could speak. "Let me show you what I have learned," she said. Images began to appear in the air above the council floor, created by Nari's advanced projection technology. The first image showed a timeline of galactic history over the past 200 years. Red marks indicated major wars, disasters, and crises. Green marks showed when those problems were solved. "Look at the pattern," Nari said. "Every major crisis in the past 2 centuries was resolved shortly after humans became involved, but we always thought it was coincidence." The next image showed the Great Plague of 2387. Billions of beings across dozens of worlds had been dying from a disease that no one understood. Then, seemingly by chance, a group of human researchers had the exact cure ready within weeks. Humans said they had been studying similar diseases, Nari explained. "We believed them, but now I have looked deeper into their research records. They began working on this cure 15 years before the plague appeared. They were not lucky. They were prepared." Wonsak, a security analyst from the planet Daehan, stood up in the audience. He had been working on his own investigation of the frontier crisis, and what he had found was even more disturbing. "Dr. Nari is correct," he said. "But it goes much deeper than plagues and diseases. I have been studying the patterns of pirate attacks and hostile activities on our borders. The humans were not just helping to defend against threats. They were tracking every dangerous movement in the galaxy." Wonsak activated his own projector, showing a 3-dimensional map of galactic space. Thousands of tiny lights moved through the darkness, representing ships, asteroids, and other objects. "This is what space traffic looked like 6 months ago," he said. "Notice how merchant ships avoided certain areas, how patrol fleets were positioned in exactly the right places to stop attacks before they happened." The map changed, showing current conditions. Now the traffic patterns were chaotic. Ships wandered into dangerous regions. Pirates struck with perfect timing. Military fleets arrived, too late to help. "The difference," Wonsak continued, "is that humans maintained a secret network of sensors and informants that covered the entire galaxy. They knew about threats weeks or months before anyone else did, and they shared that information with us. But they made it seem like ordinary security advice." Lieutenant Yunji had her own story to tell. She commanded a rescue fleet that had tried to save a damaged ship near a neutron star just the day before. It should have been a simple mission. Her people had done similar rescues dozens of times. But this time, everything went wrong. "We could not navigate safely through the gravitational fields," she told the council, her voice tight with frustration. "Our computers kept giving us wrong calculations. 3 of our ships nearly crashed into each other trying to reach the damaged vessel." She pulled up the mission records on her data pad. "I compared our navigation data with records from similar missions in the past. Every successful rescue used flight paths that we called standard approach vectors. But those vectors were not standard at all. They were calculated by human navigation specialists who understood neutron star physics better than our own scientists." Dr. Nari nodded grimly. "Lieutenant Yunji's experience matches what I found in dozens of other fields. Human agricultural techniques increased food production on 15% of inhabited worlds. Human medical diagnostic systems reduced epidemic response time by 400%. Human psychological insights prevented 3 major wars by helping different species understand each other. The evidence kept piling up. Financial analyst Seogen presented data showing that humans had facilitated 70% of interspecies trade through diplomatic services that other races had barely noticed. Cultural translator Jiwoo explained how humans had quietly resolved thousands of misunderstandings that could have led to conflicts. Engineer Chanwoo had perhaps the most shocking discovery of all. He had been studying the massive infrastructure, projects that connected different parts of the galaxy, space elevators, hyperspace gates, orbital habitats that housed billions of beings. "I always wondered how these projects were completed so efficiently," he said. "Building a space elevator should take 50 years and cost more money than most planets have. But with human help, we built them in 10 years at half the expected cost." He showed technical diagrams that made even experienced engineers gasp. The humans did not just help with construction. They redesigned our basic engineering principles to make everything stronger, cheaper, and faster to build. Our entire technological civilization is built on human innovations that we adopted without understanding. As the presentations continued, a terrible picture began to emerge. For 50 years, humanity had quietly woven itself into every aspect of galactic civilization. They had solved problems, prevented disasters, and improved life for billions of beings. But they had done it so subtly that no one realized how dependent everyone had become on their contributions. Dr. Nari returned to the center of the hall as the other speakers finished their reports. Her crystal form was now almost completely dark, which among her people indicated deep distress. "There is more," she said, her voice barely audible. "I have found evidence that the humans were in contact with forces from outside our galaxy. They served as diplomatic liaisons with civilizations so advanced that direct contact would have been traumatic for younger species." The hall erupted in shocked voices and frightened sounds. Contact with extragalactic civilizations? The idea was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. "The humans never told us about these contacts," Nari continued. "They protected us from knowledge we were not ready for, while learning from beings far more advanced than ourselves." Chancellor Vexthul finally found his voice. This cannot be true. Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization. How could they have access to such advanced knowledge?" Nari's form flickered as she accessed her deepest memory banks. "I believe the humans were never newcomers at all. I think they had been exploring the galaxy long before they made official contact with us. They let us believe they were primitive because it served their purposes." Security Chief Myongho stood up in his section of the hall. As head of Galactic Intelligence, he had access to classified information that even the council members did not usually see. "Dr. Nari is correct," he said. "I have been reviewing our oldest surveillance records. The first signs of human activity in our galaxy date back nearly 200 years before their official first contact. But the signatures were so subtle that our sensors barely detected them." He activated a classified hologram showing the outer edges of galactic space. Faint trails of energy and barely visible disturbances marked where something had passed through, the void. "The humans had been watching us for centuries," Myongho said. "Learning about us, studying our strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the day when they would reveal themselves. They did not stumble upon galactic civilization by accident. They chose to make contact when they decided we were worth helping." The weight of these revelations settled over the council like a heavy blanket. Everything they thought they knew about the past 50 years was wrong. The humans had not been junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been its secret guardians. But now the guardians were gone, and the true scope of their protection was becoming clear. Without human oversight, the galaxy was falling apart. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were failing. Trade networks were collapsing. Communication between worlds was breaking down. Worst of all, the early warning systems that had protected the galaxy from external threats were no longer functioning. For the first time in 2 centuries, galactic civilization was truly alone in a dangerous universe. As the council session ended and the representatives returned to their worlds, one thought echoed in every mind. How could they have been so blind? And more importantly, was there any way to convince the humans to come back? But deep in their hearts, most of them already knew the answer. The humans had not left in anger or frustration. They had left with the quiet dignity of teachers whose students had failed to learn the most important lesson of all, that wisdom and strength often come in humble packages, and teachers who leave do not usually return to students who never appreciated what they were being taught. Exploration. Commander Minjay had led search missions to the darkest corners of the galaxy, but he had never faced a challenge like this one. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, he stared at star charts that showed nothing but empty space where he expected to find traces of human civilization. "How does an entire species just disappear?" he asked his navigation officer, a talented young woman named Sora. Sora shook her head, frustration clear in her voice. "Sir, we have checked every system within their known range. We have followed their old trade routes. We have searched every planet they ever colonized. It is like they were never there at all." The search had been going on for 2 months now. What started as a simple mission to find and negotiate with the departed humans had become something far more disturbing. Every place the search teams visited showed signs that humans had been there, but those signs had been methodically erased. On the colony world of Kepler 442b, where humans had built the massive orbital shipyards, investigators found nothing but empty space, not even debris. The shipyards, which had been the size of small cities, had vanished completely. The only evidence they had ever existed were the alien ships that had been built there, ships that were now scattered across the galaxy. Navigator Hanul, a specialist in tracking long-range movements through space, had been studying the problem from a different angle. She was a xenopsychologist, someone who tried to understand how different alien minds worked. Her job was to predict where humans might have gone based on their psychology and culture. What she found in the human databases left her deeply troubled. "Commander Minjay," she said, entering his ready room with a thick data pad in her hands. "I have been studying human cultural patterns and historical records. I think we made a serious error in our assumptions." Minjay looked up from his own reports, hoping for some good news. "What kind of error?" Hanul sat down across from him and activated her data pad. Images and documents began to appear in the air between them, human exploration records, resource surveys, and scientific reports that went back decades. "We assumed the humans left recently and did not have time to go very far," she said. "But look at this data. The humans have been mapping uncharted regions of the galaxy for over 50 years. They have been establishing supply caches and refueling stations and systems that we did not even know existed. The evidence was overwhelming. Human exploration ships had visited thousands of star systems that were not on any official galactic charts. They had found habitable planets, asteroid mining sites, and strategic positions that could support large populations. But why did they hide this from us?" Minjay asked. Hanel's expression grew grim. "I think they were preparing for this day long before they announced their departure. The humans did not decide to leave 3 months ago. They decided to leave decades ago, and they have been getting ready ever since. This revelation changed everything about the search mission. If humans had been secretly preparing to leave for 50 years, they could have gone anywhere in the galaxy. They might even have left the galaxy entirely. Meanwhile, back on the core, worlds, the situation was getting worse every day. Emergency Coordinator Doyon found herself managing crisis after crisis as systems that had depended on human expertise continued to fail. The latest disaster was happening on the agricultural world of Ceres Prime. Without human farming techniques, crop yields had dropped by 60%. Billions of beings across the galaxy depended on food from Ceres Prime, and now there was not enough to go around. "How many worlds are facing food shortages?" Doyon asked her assistant during their daily crisis meeting. 47 worlds have declared food emergencies, came the reply. Another 112 are reporting significant shortages. If we do not find a solution soon, we could see mass starvation within 6 months. Similar problems were appearing everywhere. Medical facilities were closing as diagnostic equipment failed without human technicians to maintain it. Power grids were becoming unstable as fusion reactors shut down due to problems that only human engineers knew how to fix. Each failure revealed another way that humanity had quietly become essential to galactic civilization. They had not conquered or dominated other species. Instead, they had made themselves indispensable through knowledge, skill, and service. Strategic analyst Chan Wu was working on what might have been the most disturbing discovery of all. While studying old exploration records, he had found evidence that human technology was far more advanced than they had ever revealed. "Look at these energy signatures," he said to his research team, pointing to sensor readings from the edges of known space. "These are from human ships, but the power levels are impossible. According to their official specifications, human ships cannot generate this much energy." The data showed human vessels moving at speeds that should have been beyond their capabilities, using technologies that they had never shared with other species. Some of the energy readings suggested that human ships could travel faster than light in ways that made galactic standard technology look primitive. If humans had this technology, why did they pretend to be less advanced than us? Asked one of his researchers. Chan Wu studied the data more carefully. A terrible possibility was beginning to form in his mind. What if they were not pretending to be less advanced? What if they were pretending to be from our galaxy at all? The implications were staggering. If humans had technology that far exceeded galactic standards, they might have come from somewhere else entirely. They might have been visitors from another galaxy who had decided to stay and help their less advanced neighbors, and now they had gone home. Search teams led by Commander Minjae continued to find empty systems and erased facilities, but they also began to detect something else. At the very edge of galactic space, long-range sensors picked up signs of massive construction projects. The readings were faint and distant, but they showed structures being built on a scale that dwarfed anything in known space. Whole systems were being modified. Artificial structures the size of planets were taking shape in the void between galaxies. "Sir," Navigator Sora said during one of their deep space reconnaissance missions, "I am detecting power signatures that are, well, they are beyond our ability to measure." Commander Minjae studied the sensor displays with growing amazement and fear. Whatever the humans were building out there, it was using technology that made their previous achievements look like simple tools. "How far away are these construction sites?" he asked. "At least 50,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim," Sora replied. "It would take our fastest ships over a century to reach them." The search mission had found the humans, but they were now completely out of reach. Whatever humanity was doing in the galactic void, they were doing it with resources and technology that no other species could match. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, communications specialist Jiho was trying to send messages to the construction sites detected by the search teams. He had been broadcasting on every frequency, using every diplomatic protocol known to galactic civilization. The responses he received were not encouraging. "I have been monitoring all communication channels. For any sign of human activity," he reported to the emergency council session. "There have been a few automated responses to our messages, but they all say the same thing." He played back one of the messages for the assembled representatives. The voice was artificially generated, clearly created by a computer rather than spoken by a living human. "Your message has been received and recorded. Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for their interest, but has no further business with galactic civilization. Please direct all future communications to the automated systems that have been left to assist with the transition period." The coldness of the message sent a chill through the assembled aliens. The humans were not angry or hostile. They were simply indifferent. They had moved beyond the need for galactic civilization and saw no reason to maintain contact. But the worst news was yet to come. Security Chief Myongho stood up in the council chambers, his expression more serious than anyone had ever seen. In his hands, he carried classified reports that had arrived just hours before the emergency session. "Honored council members," he said, his voice heavy with dread. "Our long-range monitoring stations have detected something that changes everything." He activated the main holographic display, showing the outer boundaries of galactic space. At first, the display looked normal. Stars and nebulae scattered across the darkness of space. Then he adjusted the sensors to show movement and energy signatures. The peaceful-looking darkness suddenly came alive with activity. Massive objects were moving toward the galaxy from multiple directions, still far away, but approaching steadily. "What are we looking at?" asked Chancellor Vex Thule. Myongho's voice was barely above a whisper when he answered. "Extragalactic contact. Multiple civilizations from beyond our galaxy are approaching our borders. And without the humans to serve, as intermediaries, we are about to face first contact with beings that we are not prepared to meet." The realization hit the council like a physical blow. The humans had not just been protecting galactic civilization from internal threats. They had been serving as a buffer against external ones. They had been the galaxy's first line of defense against. Grand Counselor Valak had lived for over 300 years, but he had never felt as old as he did today. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours, and each new report brought more devastating news. The assembled representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as Chief Analyst Sang Yun presented his final assessment. The data he shared would change how every species in the galaxy understood their place in the universe. "Honored council members," Sang Yun said, his voice steady despite the terrible implications of his words. "We must face the truth about what humanity really was to our civilization. They were not just another member species. They were our immune system, our teachers, and our guardians. And we never even knew it." The evidence he presented was overwhelming. Every major crisis in galactic history for the past 2 centuries had human fingerprints on its resolution. The Great Plague of 2387 had been stopped by human researchers who seemed to have the perfect cure ready. The trade wars of 2341 had ended, when human mediators found solutions that satisfied all parties. The Dark Fleet invasion of 2295 had been repelled using human tactical innovations that anticipated enemy strategies with impossible accuracy. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. Historian Yanwu stood up in her section of the hall. As the keeper of galactic historical records, she had spent months digging through old archives and classified documents. What she found would shake the foundation of everything the Council thought they knew. The humans have been in contact with extra-galactic civilizations for over a century, she announced. They have been serving as diplomatic liaisons and early warning sentries, protecting us from knowledge and contact that we were not ready for. The hall erupted in voices of shock and disbelief. Contact with extra-galactic civilizations was the stuff of scientific theory and wild speculation. The idea that it had been happening for decades without their knowledge was almost too much to accept. Yanwu activated a holographic display showing communication logs that had been hidden in the deepest levels of human data systems. The logs showed regular contact with beings whose technology and knowledge were so advanced that even reading about them was difficult to understand. The humans did not just protect us from physical threats, she continued. They protected us from mental and cultural threats as well. There are civilizations out there that are so far beyond us that direct contact would have destroyed our sanity and our sense of identity. Communications specialist Jiho had his own shocking discovery to share. While trying to decode the final messages left by humanity, he had found something hidden in quantum fluctuations. A farewell note that could only be read after the humans were gone. They left us a message, he said, his voice filled with sadness, hidden in ways that only the most advanced civilizations could detect. The message appeared in the air above the council floor, written in simple words that every species could understand. We came to you as students, hoping to learn from older civilizations. Instead, we found children playing with fire in a dangerous universe. We became your guardians without your knowledge, your teachers without your gratitude. We gave you everything we could, but you saw only what you wanted to see. We leave now to find those who might value partnership over patronage. The galaxy is yours. We hope you prove worthy of it. The silence that followed was deafening. The simple words carried the weight of 50 years of misunderstanding and missed opportunities, but the revelations were not finished. Security Chief Myongho stood up, his expression grim. As head of Galactic Intelligence, he had access to the most sensitive information in known space. What he was about to reveal would terrify every being in the hall. Long-range sensors have detected massive construction projects in the galactic void, he said. Human colonies and structures built with technologies that make our most advanced civilizations look primitive. The holographic display showed the edge of galactic space, where human engineering projects stretched across light years of empty void, artificial worlds the size of solar systems, structures that bent space and time in ways that violated known physics, construction on a scale that suggested humanity had evolved far beyond their former galactic neighbors. The humans did not flee to hide, Myongho continued. They graduated to a level of civilization that makes us irrelevant. They have become something far greater than we ever imagined possible. The crushing weight of this realization settled over the council. Humanity had not been driven away by mistreatment. They had simply outgrown the need for galactic civilization. Like adults leaving childhood behind, they had moved on to challenges and opportunities that their former peers could not even comprehend. Then came the final, most terrifying revelation. Without humanity's hidden protection, Myung-ho said, his voice barely audible. "We are about to face our first contact with truly hostile extragalactic forces." The sensor displays changed to show the approaching threats. Massive objects moving through the void between galaxies, heading directly toward their borders. Energy signatures that suggested weapons and technologies designed to destroy entire star systems. The humans were the only thing standing between galactic civilization and forces that view us as insects, he continued. They maintained diplomatic relationships with civilizations so advanced that we cannot even detect them. They negotiated treaties and agreements that kept us safe from threats we never knew existed. And now they are gone. The council chamber fell into a silence deeper than space itself. The representatives from 100 worlds sat frozen in their seats, trying to process the magnitude of their miscalculation. They had dismissed humanity as a minor species useful only for menial tasks. In reality, humans had been the secret architects of galactic peace, the unseen guardians who protected younger civilizations from a universe filled with dangers beyond imagination. Chancellor Vex Thul, who had celebrated humanity's departure just months before, now spoke in a voice filled with desperation. "We must send messages," he said. "We must beg them to return. We must offer them anything they want: leadership of the Council, control of our military forces, access to all our resources." Other voices joined in, each representative offering more desperate bargains. Entire star systems in exchange for human protection. Ancient technologies that had been jealously guarded for millennia. The surrender of sovereignty itself, if it would bring humanity back. Communication specialist Jiho activated every long-range transmitter in the galaxy, broadcasting their pleas toward the construction sites in the void. The messages were sent on every frequency, translated into every language, encoded with every diplomatic protocol known to galactic civilization. The responses came back within hours, but they were not from humans. They were from automated systems, left behind to manage the transition period. The messages were brief and final. Humanity has moved beyond the need for galactic civilization. Your offers are noted but irrelevant. The protective agreements that kept your region of space safe have expired. You must now face the universe as equals rather than protected children. We wish you success in your growth toward true civilization. Perhaps in a few thousand years, when you have learned wisdom, we might meet again as equals. The automated systems then went silent forever. As the council session ended and representatives began to return to their home worlds, the terrible reality of their situation became clear. They had been given the greatest gift any civilization could receive, the guidance and protection of beings far wiser than themselves, and they had thrown it away because their pride could not accept help from those they saw as inferior. Now, they faced a universe filled with dangers they could not understand, threats they could not fight, and challenges they were not prepared to meet. The approaching extragalactic forces were just the beginning. Without humanity's unseen protection, every day would bring new crises that they had no idea how to handle. In the weeks that followed, desperate attempts were made to prepare for the approaching contact. Defense fleets were mobilized. Scientists worked frantically to develop new technologies. Diplomatic protocols were established for dealing with civilizations that might be hostile. But everyone knew the truth, even if they were afraid to say it out loud. Without the humans, galactic civilization was like a child trying to play a game designed for adults. They had lost their teachers, their protectors, and their guides to a larger universe. The humans had departed without a sound, leaving behind only the echo of opportunities missed and wisdom ignored. Their miscalculation had been simple but complete. They had failed to recognize greatness when it stood quietly among them, offering help without asking for glory. Now, as unknown forces approached from the cosmic dark, the galaxy could only wait and hope that they would prove worthy of the universe they had inherited. But in their hearts, most of them already knew the answer. The students had failed their final exam, and the teachers were never coming back.